Coffee Pot Conversations.
Hello and welcome to Coffee Pot Conversations, hosted by an Englishman in Paris. My name's Paul, and as you can tell, I've still got a bit of a croaky throat, which gives me just a little bit of a sexy voice. Rather apt, because today's episode 1.4 is Romancing in Paris. And our special guest today is Lily Heise, author, blogger, tour guide, podcaster. I found myself in Pigalle having a little chat with her. Interesting conversation. She deals mainly with romantic side of things in Paris, and that's not just the naughty side of romance, but there's very nice romance. Which, yes, I have a conversation with a lady at work, Frankie, and she wants to go to Paris with her friend. But the friend's boyfriend says, "Well, I want to go because it's meant to be romantic." And yes, Paris is romantic. I'm not gonna lie. It is a very romantic city. But I've been by myself. I've also been with Nev. Been our separate ways, such as for this podcast episode. I was in Pigalle, Montmartre. I just finished with Friendship Board 1.3. And Nev went to Petit Palais, and she also went to La Favorite round near the Marais. It's that pink one opposite the church with the red door. You know, people can do what they want to do by themselves, but they can also go with other people. I've taken the boys, as I've mentioned, New Year's Eve. I've been with Nev and the boys for that little period of time. Walk around the Christmas market. It's a family place. I sounded proper. He's like, family, get out my pub. But no, it is. It's if you want to go and look at the culture, look at the history, look at the fashion, look at the art, just flaneur around, walk around, absorb Paris. Paris really is what you make of it. Yes, you can make it romantic. You can make it sensual. You can make it loving. You can make it... I haven't been able to because I'm not actually sure where to go of an evening. But you can get on the lash, and there's many cocktail bars, I've been told. Fine dining, not so fine dining. As we discovered in 1.1, I like to eat normal food, and I've not been disappointed in Paris at all. Yes, there are places where you can go for nice food, really fine food. And that's fine. Everyone has their own bit of Paris that they like. If you just want to sit in the Jardin de Luxembourg and draw and paint, crack on. If you want to do roller skating, go roller skating. If you want to do a little bit of dancing, there's plenty of dances. I was reading an article about tea dances for seniors the other day, which I thought was quite interesting, except I'm not quite senior age yet. Otherwise, I would be taking Nev there. We often go tea dancing back here in London. So, yes, whilst there are many things to do in Paris, today's episode is more about the romance side of Paris. I want to quickly cover something slightly off topic because I am changing a little bit the format of the show. Let me know what you think. By all means, come find me on Instagram at an Englishman in Paris blog, or send me an email, coffeepot@anenglishmaninparis.blog. Let me know what you think. I'm always open to suggestions. I'm always happy to talk back. Excuse me, in a respectful way. I don't mean like talk back, but you know what I mean. I'm happy to reply, respond, and I want to build this together. I want this Coffee Pot Conversation community. I really, really do, and it can only be done with you guys. Otherwise, as my boys know, I can go over the same point over and over again, which I'm not going to do now because we don't have time for the 6-hour lectures. So I'm just going to quickly mention what's happening in the world. In England, the government have said, excuse me, they're going to crack down on the mobile phones in schools. So, all right, I don't think they should be used in schools. I really don't. We're on our screens enough as it is. Why do you need a mobile phone? So schools in the UK are going to be stopping at some point, possibly. Yes, little Johnny needs to be picked up. In my day, it was like, be at the school gates, 3:30, boom, and that's it, problem solved. Give notes for detentions. You're not in detention today, it's going to be tomorrow, however it needs to work. If there's an emergency, you phone the school finds the child. It used to be that simple. So I understand that, parents that are worried about this whole cyberbullying because children are taking their phones into school to be bullied, but I don't understand the difference between being cyberbullied at school and if they're taken outside of school, they can still be cyberbullied. So I think that's a whole different issue. I think they should be banned because you have the issues of theft, and harassment of, threatening behaviour, intimidation, as well as, you've only got this phone, whereas I've got the latest and greatest big screen, all the rest of it. We're going to end up walking around in VR masks. But it did get me thinking, because I do a lot of reading. There is a town in Ireland, and they are trying to push through the fact that they want to stop their children having mobile phones until secondary school, which is the age of 11 upwards. Fully understand that. And that's not just don't have them at school. That's for children not to have them, because we are glued to our screens, children and adults, even senior citizens. My uncle is on his phone, he's on his laptop all the time, checking out Facebook and YouTube. He does dance, he teaches dance, so he's involved in all of that stuff constantly, though. My nan, bless her, she used to be on her phone, again, Facebook, just used to scroll through, but she also did crosswords and communicate with the family. But do we need it? My mum, she does colour by numbers on the tablets and stuff, and jigsaws. Love her bits. But she's not always on the phone, no. But, it is there, and it is part of society. So one aspect, I say, is placing the Republic of Ireland greystones. They're trying not to give the children the phones. So, all right, maybe feature phones, as they're called, or dumb phones, not smartphones. So, anything touch screeny type of thing. Fair enough. I fully understand that. What happened in France back in, I believe it was 2018, was Emmanuel Macron, the president. He promised as part of his election campaign that he would only outlaw children's phones in nurseries, primaries and middle schools until around the age of 15. So this banned children from using the phones in playgrounds and at break times, anywhere on school premises. The actual legislation passed in 2010, and it says children shouldn't be using phones in class. All right, but now he's gone a little bit further, which is great. But then jump forward a few years, 2022, there's a report from the Christian Network in Europe, because I get my sources from everywhere, and they did a little bit of research, and they actually said that mobile phones are still being used in French schools. Granted, not as much, but still a fair bit. And then you read a little bit deeper and you actually start thinking, well, yeah, because sometimes children need a calculator, or they have to do a little bit of research. So rather than be using expensive laptops and Chromebooks that the schools may or may not have, they quickly Google on their phones, using school Wi-Fi, I'm guessing, to get answers. Or maybe they need to log in and use QR codes for their schoolwork because things are going online. That's a whole different topic. So that is a little bit of a worry, a little bit of a disturbance that, yes, children are using phones in schools, but they're actually using it for the right reasons. They're being shown how to do things properly, which is great. There's no escape from mobile phones. Now, I did a little bit more digging around, and there's a place called Saint-Port, and they are introducing restrictions on the phone use in streets, shops and parks. It's not enforceable by police by any stretch, but it kind of makes sense, except the children say there's nothing else to do in the area. That's a little bit of a worry, but I understand that youth centres are closed. Granted, France, Paris especially, a lot of grass areas for children with crime flames, things like that. Up to a certain age, though, we have the same here. Excuse me, sort of children, 13 and 14, they're stuck between they want to play, they might have younger brothers and sisters, they just want to hang around on the climbing frame. Can't always do it. But this, again, is for children under the age of 15, saying they shouldn't be using mobile phones. And in fairness, I don't think adults should be using mobile phones in the street too much either. You see them walking across, they're on their phones, they're not even paying attention, or you see them sitting on the metro. No, there's no eye contact, there's no face-to-face stuff. It was lovely during lockdown, but we still need that human interaction. But then, what if we want to take photos or check a map? It's a very, very dodgy situation to play, but it does get you thinking. So, one last aspect before we actually do go into the show is I actually did pull my phone out during the interview just to have a quick little snippet just to show Lily that I was listening to her podcasts. She was referencing a book and I said, oh, yes, I just listened to that episode that mentioned that book. Boom, wallop. But there's mobile phone etiquette and everything else that's going on. again, with screens, I've got Lily's book on a Kindle. It's another screen. You see them on the London Underground, people reading Kindles, which I think is great. But you can also have a Kindle on the phone. It just doesn't stop. We're screen. We've now got the Apple goggles, and it's an absolute nightmare. We just need to slow down and think, says he who is producing a podcast to be listened to on a mobile phone. Anyway, enough chitty-chatty. Let's get back to myself and Lily Heise, 1.4, Romancing in Paris on
Coffee Pot Conversations.
So, who are you and who are you?
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, Paul. It's a delight to meet you in person after our corresponding. So, bienvenue à Paris.
Merci.
Welcome to Paris. So my name is Lily Heise, and I'm originally from Canada, but I've been living in Paris for over 20 years now. I came to Paris originally for my studies and fell in love with the city, and I've been living here ever since. And I am an author and a travel writer, and I also do tours here in Paris, and I have a podcast much different from yours, but I also have a podcast on Paris which focuses in each episode on a different romantic spot in the city.
And the name of that podcast?
Thank you. It is Romancing in Paris. They're nice, short little podcasts, so easy to listen to, easy to get inspiration. And now that I have over 50 episodes, you can, and each one generally travels to a different arrondissement, so you can connect a few of the episodes together so that you can have a few different romantic places to see in one area.
And I have listened to quite a few of them, and I know as you're talking through, you say, as I mentioned in such and such episode, which is nice. With podcasts, what I tend to do is I start at the beginning, and then I sort of like a Netflix batch. I just watch it straight through.
Oh, great!
So I'm catching up.
Well,
slowly.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you've tuned in and found that interesting. And in fact, some of the episodes are linked to my website as well. I have an award-winning blog on Paris, romantic things to do, and not only in Paris, called Je t'aime me neither, which is named after my first book.
Which I have to say I have finished.
Oh, I hope you liked it.
I'm not a strong reader.
No worries.
But I knowing I was going to meet you, I had to finish it. I just wanted to know what the ending was. And I'm not going to lie, the ending, it left me wanting more. It really did.
Well, I have good news. There's a sequel, right?
There certainly is. And the sequel is called
Je t'aime maybe. And so the first book, Je t'aime me neither, which came out 10 years ago, if you can believe it. It was, it seems like yesterday. But that book is a humorous take on looking for romance in Paris, because a lot of people think Paris is the city of love, which it is, but it can be the city of too much love as well. And so the book goes through my real life romantic misadventures in Paris, told in a funny, fictionalized way. And so the sequel has a slight of a different slant. It's a little more mature. I was a little bit older when I wrote that book, and the stories evolve in a different way. So I do hope, if you're looking to carry on your reading about Paris, that you will pick up this book too.
It's actually already on my Kindle.
Oh, Paul!
I didn't want to start before talking to you. It's, I read the first one on Kindle. Yeah, I've got to download it now.
Oh, fantastic! I'm so glad to hear.
So you sort of done almost like a Sex and the City thing. You start off sort of at one age, and you've progressed and matured, shall we say?
Yes. So I did write 2 books, but I had to. Well, who knows, maybe I'll pick that series up again. But I almost had to stop, because by writing about all these romantic misadventures, more kept coming my way. And so it was like I was in it too much, and then bringing similar sorts of scenarios and so I just had to kind of shelf that a little bit for now. And the last book I wrote, it's called There's Only One Paris, and it's a collection of short stories inspired by Paris during the pandemic. So they're not real stories. 1 and 1.5, you could say, are inspired by real people, because the book was a collaborative effort for people following my Facebook page. They sent in their favorite arrondissement, their favorite things to do in Paris, and then I realized that there was enough to do one story per arrondissement. And then each week I would post what the destination would be, and people would just chime in their experiences in that place or their favorite parts of maybe a museum, and I weave them through the story. And so it was a kind of a joint effort in the sense that they were giving me inspiration that would come into the book in different ways. And so it was a lot of fun, and that was a kind of my project to get me through the pandemic, but involving people from around the world who couldn't travel to Paris and for a long time. So it was a different sort of book to give people hope and to show how maybe you could change your life based on the experiences that you lived through that maybe seemed negative at the time.
Now, I'm going to do something that we're not meant to do. I'm going to pick up my phone.
Sure.
And the reason being, not had a phone call, but the last episode I listened to, you actually mentioned the book. It was episode 20, about the 20th arrondissement. There we go. I won't do that in case it's thingy rules.
No worries.
The Pavilion
de l'Ermitage.
There we go.
Yeah.
And did you mention? See, I do listen.
You've been paying attention.
I don't often research about people unless it's Louis XIV, but that's a nightmare.
Very complex. Louis XIV.
I learned so much, not just about him, but obviously what he did with Paris, but the whole family tree that blew my mind. I didn't know so many people involved, including the English royal family, or the British royal family, and the Dutch, and then the German and the Spanish. It's one big incestuous.
A little too incestuous.
Yeah. But that was many years ago. Nothing changes. So, getting back to the questions, I'll start with the questions. What makes a place romantic?
That's a very good question, Paul. Thank you for asking that, because I'm the only romantic expert on Paris, and I do focus on romantic travel around the globe too. So I think a true romantic place, because we're talking about travel or going or feeling a place, is a place which gives the essence of a destination, but it has an intimate setting in some way. It showcases something important about the city, like Paris, about history, about gastronomy, about perhaps some historic figures who lived here. But the setting is also romantic and enchanting and special in some way. So it brings all those things together, which allows you to have a romantic moment with your chérie, with your sweetheart, and focus on that time together, but in this special place, which will create a memory that you'll have for life.
I like that. That's nice.
Would you like to hear a few examples?
Go on then. Yeah. Around Paris or around the world?
Well, let's do Paris, since that's the focus of your podcast. So I think, for example, you're staying over in the 12th, right?
That's correct.
So there are in the 12th a lot of passageways. So Paris has covered passageways and uncovered open air passageways, and the 12th has a number of these beautiful passageways that were kind of where old workers kind of workshops, artisanal workshops were. Louis XIV, speaking of the Sun King that you mentioned before, in order to furnish Versailles, he made it tax-free for furniture makers to set up in this area. Wow. Yeah, and so this is why there were a lot there, and there still are some. So there are these charming passageways that have a bit of a kind of rustic chic vibe too, but there are not many people, so you can walk hand in hand and take in this atmospheric setting. So I do like those passageways. I do like small museums, and here we are. We've met at the edge of Montmartre, which is my district in Paris, but we're also in the Soapy or South Pigalle area. And I didn't choose this location au hasard by chance, because we're on Rue Frochot, which is lined with cocktail bars, which used to be escort girl bars, and so kind of like girly bars. This is why we just saw a dance pole over there in this little lounge of the place we are at. And so they've kept the spirit of the neighborhood while cleaning it up a little bit and making it for today's couples, you could say. So there are a number of bars on the street which have that spirit of Pigalle, but without the too naughty side of it.
I did notice Dirty Dick opposite. It's
Again, that's another old. They kept the facade, and inside it's quite different. It's a tiki bar where it has this beautiful, kind of like Hawaiian Tahitian woman, kind of 1950s style mural inside, but excellent cocktails. And so these make for great date spots, original date spots. I also am quite fond of small museums in Paris. Like, of course, when you're coming to the city, you want to see the bigger ones, but they're hardly romantic, being jostled around by huge tour groups and the like. So this area has a few very nice small museums, namely the Gustave Moreau Museum. So that used to be, it's a symbolist artist, and so he's kind of a bit weird, kind of mythological themes, but it was his home. He was a bit wealthy. It was his home and studio, and leading up to his death he turned it into a museum before he even died. A modest guy. It's intimate. It has this kind of real feel like you're stepping back in time and into the artist's life. And then, of course, nearby is also the Musée de la Vie Romantique, or the Romantic Life Museum. Not a romantic museum, it is, but it's about the romantic movement of the early 1800s. And so the setting is also romantic, but I find the Gustave Moreau, if I had to choose which is more physically romantic, the Gustave Moreau. But it's things like that I like to highlight in my writing and on my podcast too.
Great. I had a question down which you've already answered. It was, is your book fully autobiographical, or was it entwined with a few anecdotes?
All right. So my first two books, the ones we've mentioned earlier, 95% real. All the names are changed except for maybe one or two, and a few timelines were slightly changed. And a few other things were roughly modified, but otherwise they're just told in like if you're looking back at your life and wanted to tell a story about it, you wouldn't go, well, I did this, then I did that, and then, oh, that's kind of boring. And so I've invented the conversations with my friends, but we certainly had similar conversations, but so that was a little bit invented.
And the friends, your lady friends, are they their real nicknames, or?
Yes. The friend who's called Naughty, that is really what we called her, and this is what we still call her today. She has a real name, but the others, those nicknames are used a little bit less, but Naughty in particular was what we called her.
And Special K?
That's a little nickname that was I believe part of her email back in the day, and so that's why I chose that, but we called her by her first name usually.
So back in England, Special K's breakfast cereal.
Oh yes, this friend is a very health-oriented friend, and so this is also why I thought that would suit her, because she's quite a health nut, and so it was a little nod to that.
And are you still in touch with them all, or?
Still in touch with them all. Some moved on, and you will discover that when you read Je t'aime, maybe, because one of the friends has left, but we're still close friends. She just no longer lives here. Another friend has moved to the suburbs, so we hang out a little less. However, we're still close.
That's good. All right, and I got this from your book.
Okay, uh-oh.
Shows I did read it.
Yeah.
All right, firstly, moving away from that, City of Light or City of Lights?
It should be singular. It should be City of Light. Now, there are a few theories over where Paris got that nickname. One is the Enlightenment period, so which was the mid-1700s, and so Paris became a place where people came as well from different places, mostly around Europe, sometimes further afield, to come and to be part of the intellectual movement that was happening at the time. But also, apparently, before there was gas lighting, and then before that, there was actually lighting in Paris by torches. So, and Paris was a very dark city before then, and then it became known as the city that then, it was obligatory to have these lights outside your buildings. And so, therefore, people got it known as the City of Light, but it should be singular.
So moving back to the book, City of Light, red light, disco light, morning light. How do you perceive it now?
The city itself or my life, because it's a little different, because now that I'm a little bit older, the disco lights are somewhat dimmer than before, especially because one of the places I did like to go out kind of in a more party vibe in this neighborhood, the Bus Palladium has closed down, which is very sad. It's being torn down and turned into a hotel, so it's a historic place, so that's too bad. But I don't go out disco dancing much anymore, but who knows, now and then. But the city is still a vibrant going out city. I would say London might be a little more exciting for that, but it depends on what you want, because Paris has a range of entertainment for different interests, because there are a lot of concerts here. There may be more variety of small concerts here. You can go for jazz, you can go for acoustic guitar or classic. Like, there are a lot of activities in Paris. And there are clubs and good places to do dancing. But there might be other cities around the world that are a bit more exciting for that. But there's certainly a lot of evening activities that one can enjoy here.
Have you noticed a change because of the lockdown or the whole pandemic?
Probably a little bit, that people, even myself and with my friends, we just got used to meeting at one's places, because then afterwards things were closed, and so we needed to meet at our houses instead of out. So that has lingered a bit and has probably reduced people's going out somewhat, but I'm sure people still like to go out too. Now that it's no longer summer and the weather isn't as nice, I think people are staying in a lot more. But when the weather is nice, people love to go out in Paris, especially to sit en terrasse. And there are more and more big outdoor bars, especially down along the river. And so promoting people spending time outdoors, especially in summer, late spring to early fall.
The love season.
Exactly.
And I read somewhere that they're stopping the heating.
Yeah, I believe that was as of last year. But here's the thing. Gas heating. If you use electric, I've noticed more and more places have been installing electric heaters outdoors, because I think, I'm quite sure those are allowed. It was this gas being admitted into the atmosphere, which is why the gas heaters were forbidden just last year. But look around now that you've got a bit more time in Paris, and you'll notice there's gas heating being installed, electric. Sorry. Yeah.
Again, referencing the book, I don't know the pronunciation. I'm going to try a French accent. La Tigresse. Where did that originate? And which came first, the nickname or the book?
That's a cute question. Thanks for asking, because I do sometimes go by the nickname Lily La Tigresse. So there is a bit of a historic, I think there have been movies and books called Lily La Tigresse. And so in French, my name is a nickname, but they spell it Lili. And it's a nickname for Natalie, a few other names, Liliane, different people's names like that. And so, I've got a bit of a sultry side, and so this tigress part came out a little bit in my behavior. I'm a Leo, and so I do have a bit of a lioness quality, and but Lily La Tigresse is just quite cute. But I used to do kind of a bit sexier, sultrier things too, by keeping things still very PG-13, but so that's part of my personality too.
Now, off topic, PG-13. we have different things in the UK.
Okay.
So that would either be, we have 12 and 12A. So a 12, you have to be 12, but a 12A, you can be, I think, under 12, but with adult approval.
Got it.
Or adult supervision. But do Paris have the same sort of classifications?
I think that they're a little less strict on those things.
Doors open and you come, we take your money.
Yeah, well, you can also see around the city there's a lot of advertising with like a lot more naked, almost naked women advertising things all over the city. I hope that's changing because, this kind of representation of mostly women, France is a little bit behind on some things like that. So I do hope that that's improving slightly.
It's normally, we see when we come here, walking through the metro, you see the adverts for the art galleries, and there's normally ladies in a state of undress.
Oh, well, if that's the exhibit. We've got an exhibit here, but they're all closed. So I think right where we are.
The room I'm staying in, there's two paintings. One, and the lady, like her top's just fallen open, and the other one's just accidentally lounging around. And the other one, she's playing the guitar, and the scarf doesn't look like it's keeping her warm.
Got it. Well,
but artistically done.
The French do have a slightly different approach and philosophy and outlook to things, but I think the over-sexualization of women that they can have sometimes I'm not totally fond of. But anyway.
So back in the olden days, I say that like the 80s and 90s, it was acceptable, but now we've...
now we, the world is changing, and sometimes for the worse, but sometimes a lot for the better. And the equality of women here and the treatment of women as equals is improving, but it still has a ways to go.
Tour guiding.
Yes.
How's that split? I don't know if I can say gender-wise, but between men and women. More women tour guides? Or?
More women tour guides for sure. So from what I could gather, at least it's something like, at the very least 60-40, but probably more like 70-30. So I do tours for direct booking clients, and I also I work for a company that big company, but small group tours, not like walking around with an umbrella. I only do small group or private tours, and most of the guides are women. Women tend to be more interested in culture and arts and history than men, just in general, and so this is probably why there are more women tour guides, because we're more interested in those sorts of things. So that's probably part of the reason.
So again, back in London, I do the London walks, and you tend to get the women, like I say, doing the culture side of things, and the men tend to do the scary ghost stories. I don't know if that's down to intonation of voice or just general enthusiasm.
I think it's probably their general enthusiasm. But in Paris, we have fewer of those tours, just because I think it fits in maybe a little bit better in London or Anglo-Saxon themes, whereas in Paris, there are a couple tours like that, but I think a little bit less than. But in London, it definitely fits into the history there a bit better.
Paris is generally guillotine, that's it, end of haunting.
Yeah.
Apart from Saint-Denis, and that's it.
Oh, yeah, there's Saint-Denis walking around with his head.
No, I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't it have been great? Yeah. But some of the tours that I do, I actually do a couple more interesting, different sorts of tours. I do have some tours that are geared towards couples who are looking for something different to add to their stay in Paris. I have special romantically themed tours that even discover, and I'm quite I do a very in-depth historical tour, and so I do some tours around the city which evoke romantic stories and romantic couples throughout history, and so it's a chance to visit and learn, but also to have a bit different take on things, and then hopefully that will inspire a romantic trip. In this area, I do a tour called The Sexy Side of Pigalle, which does talk about a little bit the naughty history in the area, because this was the kind of over the in the 1800s was kind of the spot where you might have some risque things happening, but also the cabarets. It's all about the cabarets and the kind of these cocktail bars here, or a bit the racier side of the neighborhood, and it's quite fun. So I did that recently with a couple, and it was just to kind of set their evening off on a fun start, and they stuck around in the area and sent me pictures after and had a really fun time. So yeah.
They used to have, I don't want to say a sex museum.
Yes, that closed about 8 years ago, maybe 10, probably about 8. Yeah, it used to be along this boulevard here. See, this street is interesting. That we're in the lounge of the Pigalle Hotel. I thought it would be quiet, but it's quieter than some cafes that are clanking around with.
As to the ambience of the podcast,
exactly. Yeah. But just up the street is the boulevard where there was a great concentration of cabarets, concert halls, cafes, and even dance halls. From the 1860s to the early 1900s, it was kind of the entertainment zone of Paris. It still is one of them. And this was the great heyday of the Moulin Rouge and Think Toulouse-Lautrec and all these fun times. And those were really here, and not many have survived, and that's why it's quite exciting. But over the 20th century, a lot of those places turned into kind of the shadier side of evening entertainment, and I wouldn't recommend necessarily going for a big walk around this area at night if you it's not dangerous, but it's a little ooh la la. But without being like Amsterdam's red light district either. There aren't prostitutes standing in the street or anything like that. It's just kind of racy shops and movie houses and stuff like that just gives a little giggle. But it's still fun to see the Moulin Rouge and imagine what it might have been like back in the day.
And have you been to a show at the Moulin Rouge?
I have a confession to make. Are you ready for this?
It's going to go one of two ways. You used to be
yes or
a dancer.
No. I know. I like that. Yeah, that's pretty funny. No, I've never been to the Moulin Rouge show. And I'm waiting for a friend who really wants to go, who's going to pay for me to go, because it is not cheap.
It is not cheap.
But I do have several friends who live here in Paris who've been for, let's say, a wedding anniversary or their special birthday, and they've had a great time. So I do think the show is worthwhile. And so I'm just waiting for that person who wants to pay for me to go, because I don't want to pay 100 euros for it. But there is this little nice thing for your listeners. There is a bar behind and on top of the Moulin Rouge, which if anyone's who follows my social media accounts knows, because I'm a regular there. And you have to know that it's how to get to it. It's a bit tricky. It's down a laneway just to the left of it and up some stairs, and then you can be right behind the windmill. And so it is super cool, and it's not a pretentious place. That's why I like it, and I actually interviewed the manager because it's a whole complex there. There's the big nightclub, there's the Moulin Rouge, and then this bar. And he really wanted to make a place for the locals to go and feel connected to the spot, because most locals don't go to the show. And it's a great place. And so it's called the Bar à Boule, a boule like bubbles. Even though it's not a champagne-focused bar, but it does have wine, cocktails, kind of casual food, and a really fun ambiance. So I go there quite frequently, and I've certainly spent more than $100 there, 100 euros there. But I will go to see the show one day before I leave Paris, if I ever do.
So you've not done Moulin Rouge, but have you done the Eiffel Tower?
Well, the Eiffel
Another confession.
Tower, yes. So The first time I went up the Eiffel Tower, I was 17 and on exchange in Italy. That's when I first came to Paris, and we went up the Eiffel Tower, and that was quite the experience. But I have to say, I've probably only been up the Eiffel Tower about 10 times, because I will only go, I repeat, I will only go with the closest of friends or family, because otherwise, just the hassle of going up it and lines and stuff, it's not really my thing. But I do think it's an important site in Paris. I do have a recommendation if anyone wants to go up the Eiffel Tower. I suggest, and especially if you don't have a ticket, going just before dusk. Surprisingly, people don't think to go at that time, and it's the golden hour. If it's sunny weather, it's so beautiful up there because the sun sets near on that side of the city. That's the west side, and it's just got gorgeous light. And so I had a friend visiting a couple weeks ago, and we were on a walk, and she decided to go up, but I just sat there and was watching the sun on the ground. I went and had an apéro, I went and had a drink, but then when I came back, I was just sitting watching. She showed me her pictures. It was stunning. So just like I would recommend going for anybody around then, and the bigger groups don't go then because they're usually at some mediocre dinner place. So I said bigger groups, not everybody, but most people are eating, but it's a really nice time to go. So just whenever sundown is, planned to go about 40 minutes before, or even up to an hour before, and then you're up there as the sun's setting. It's really pretty, and there are fewer people, like I said.
Actually, one of my favourite photos that I've taken was at that time. I was on one of the bridges miles away, but it was focused in the background, and there was a goose just flying with two clouds in the sky. And it was just that magical time with the lights in the sky.
Yeah, no, it's perfect, because also, like you said, if you're somewhere in more central Paris looking towards it, then the sky will be really beautiful over in that direction. And there's a really nice view of it just for people who kind of want a nice romantic photo. There's a nice view of it at the tip of a bridge called the Pont au Change, and it is in Place du Châtelet, and you've got the Conciergerie, and you've got the Pont Neuf, and then in the distance you have the Eiffel Tower, and so it's a nice place for a photo. In the morning, not really in mid-afternoon or at the end of the day or evening, and so there's just a nice little tip if you want to enjoy the Eiffel Tower without the crowds. I did write an article about it for Photos, so if you're looking for Eiffel Tower views without crowds, check out that article.
What pulled you into podcasts? Was it a conscious decision, or was it an organic thing? It's something like, we need you.
Why don't we just say it's an organic thing? A friend of mine was launching a podcast network. It's called the Paris Underground Radio, and it was founded by Jennifer Garrity, who is a host of a few of the shows on there. And because I cover a lot of topics on Paris, I started up 2 podcasts originally, and the other one I really enjoy, but it takes too much time. I might pick it up again in the future. That one's called Paris Caché, or Paris Caché, and it really goes in depth. It's a deep dive history podcast on sites that reveal more than meets the eye. And so there are 6 episodes on there that are worth listening to, but it's extremely time consuming. So I might pick it up again in the future.
That was the first podcast yours that I listened to.
Oh, and did you like it?
I did. And so, it's finished. No, what am I going to do? And then I found your other one. So
funny. I'm glad that's what you discovered first. And I did enjoy that, but each podcast would take me a day to prepare because it's really well researched, and then with the producing, it's time consuming because we put sounds and stuff. So maybe one day we can pick it back up. But instead, then my Romancing in Paris podcast has taken a bit of that on. Certain episodes are quite well researched, but they're shorter. They're, like I said, about 10 to 18 minutes long, and so but there is some history and some surprising stories. Some upcoming podcasts I discovered a surprising ooh la la twist and turn because I go down the rabbit hole. I'm finding a site and then I find one and then I start looking. I'm like, who are these people? And so you find out about them and you're like, oh, scandal. Or, woo. So the one coming up, so there are some fun twists and turns. So don't expect just a fluffy podcast. It's actually fairly in-depth and hopefully interesting.
And from my perspective, same with books, I like it short and sweet, and the fact that I can listen to it making breakfast or it's so easy to listen. It honestly is easy to listen to.
I'm glad to hear that. Thanks.
And yes, I've picked it up and I'm episode 20 now. 21 when I get back to the hotel.
Sounds good.
Okay, right. You also write about other countries, but what makes Paris special?
Oh. So,
firstly,
yes.
What other countries do you write about?
I do have to say, and here we are sitting inside when it's raining outside. Paris does get quite gloomy in winter, and I do more traveling in winter, and so that gives me an opportunity to visit other places. So it's usually going to warm destinations in winter, and that's when I'm covering other places. And so, for example, last winter I went to Costa Rica and Cuba. Yeah, two nice, very different places, and that gave me an opportunity to write about those after I wrote a couple articles on those places, so that was nice. And then this winter I'm going to Thailand, and then I don't know where, so hopefully I'll be able to write a little bit about those places. And then so Paris is a very special place, and this is how so many people fall in love with it, and I don't blame them, because it's not only an attractive place, it has very, very fascinating history, and to turn to the romantic sides of it, the French also have such a passion for life. Even though they complain a lot, they live fully, and they love going out, and they love enjoying the city, the museums, the parks, the cafes, just walking. And this adds a nice charge, kind of this fervor to the city, and they take their time to enjoy too. It's not like in New York where it might be like everybody rushing around, or in the city in London, rush. Here they take the time to enjoy, and I really feel that adds this other element, and so you have everything you would need for romance here. Plus some kind of fun, racy, romantic history to the city too, and some interesting historic characters as well. And so I think the French really, the passion comes through in a lot that they do, and that adds to why this city is so special.
Right, the last question on my list: how do you find the romantic locations?
Well, that's a good question. So, as I mentioned before, I've lived in Paris for a very long time, and so I've been around the block, or all 20 arrondissements many times. Sometimes I discover a street I've never been down. I'm like, oh, this is nice. There are a few arrondissements I know not as well, but I do know the city quite well, especially since I give tours. And so because of the fact that I give tours, I'm constantly learning and discovering the history of the city. But I launched a series on my website quite a while ago now, maybe about 6 years ago, where maybe 7, where I did the top 10 sites per arrondissement. And I was really looking for a unique place, unique museum. Sometimes it's just a street, a cafe, a bar, restaurant. So it touched on the various elements that you might want in that destination, that arrondissement. And so my podcast is often inspired by places in these guides, but not always. Sometimes it's a new place. But I am constantly discovering and analyzing, and I know the city pretty well. So this is why, for the podcast, for example, I try to cover different types of places in each episode so that it isn't all just a restaurant each time or all like a public square. So I try to shake them up a little bit. So I have kind of, sometimes I change my mind and save a destination for the future podcast too.
Quick question, not listed down anywhere. Do you speak French?
Yes, so I come from Canada, and not every Canadian speaks French well. However, in our education system, French is encouraged, and I was in French immersion, so just solid French class for 4 years in elementary school. So when I moved here, I had a good foundation, and my French is very good, but I still have an accent. And do you want to know what's funny? When I speak French, they think I'm British. But of course, when I speak English, you don't think I sound English, do I? No. The French automatically say, oh, you must speak English. And I think it's because I have a sing-songy voice, and Americans is a little more monotonous, and I don't sound French-Canadian when I speak French. So they think I'm British. So
when you speak English,
yes.
Do people think you're American?
Yes,
As opposed to...
yes. And I'm fine with that because we're North Americans sound roughly the same. So I don't expect everyone. It's like New Zealanders and Australians, it's hard to tell them apart unless you've lived in the place. But I have a very neutral accent anyway, so I don't sound like I'm typically from one given place.
And if you don't mind me asking, have you been back to Canada since leaving?
I've never lived back in Canada, but I go back once a year to see friends and family, and I usually go in summer. As I mentioned, I don't like winter, and so I'm usually back in summers and catching up with people while I'm there.
And you've been to America?
Yes, I haven't traveled all over the States, but I've been to the States 10 times or so.
I was asking, because it's a leading point, donuts. Krispy Kreme. Or Tim Hortons.
Oh, come on. You can't ask a Canadian that. Of course Tim Hortons.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
You've had both?
Yep. We have Krispy Kremes over in England. And I went over to Canada 10, maybe 12 years back. Literally a long weekend. I had an uncle over there. It was his 90th birthday. So me, my dad, my uncle jumped on an aeroplane, surprised him, had the birthday. I don't remember where it was. It was an English-speaking part of Canada.
Sure.
And I remember on site of the hotel was a Tim Hortons. I'd never heard of them. I had no idea who it was.
Yeah.
And I made my way through each and every flavour.
Good job. Did you have a favourite?
I didn't. I still don't.
I like the crullers, honey crullers.
I did have a bit of a fancy of those.
The texture's so nice.
It's a different texture.
Yeah.
But they've recently opened up in England as well.
I hear that I've seen them in the States. I was surprised. Wow. I was like, oh, but I think they must be doing a bit of an expansion. I don't know if they would do well here.
I don't see many.
Sorry, Timmy's, but
so I don't see many donut shops around.
It's a bit of a trend over the last few years, and there is a place that does good donuts. It's called Bone Shaker, which is, I'm not the first person to talk about them, but I don't have a sweet tooth. Let me just make that clear. So I will try something. And sometimes I'll crave a bit of sweets, but I'm not the one seeking that out first. So that's why there might be other good donut places. But I just tried it for the first time the other day. A friend who runs the website Secrets of Paris, Heather Stimler, had some, and they were very good. I certainly thoroughly enjoyed them. Apparently they're vegan too, so it made it a little bit healthier. I'm not so sure, but if you're
less
down,
guilt.
Yeah, less guilt. But if you're down in that area, you might want to pick one up.
Yes, around Rue, the one beginning with M.
Montorgueil.
There we go.
Exactly.
The posh street with the expensive eclairs. But
the eclairs are very good too, but go for a donut instead.
last time or time before I was there, I think it was Stora.
Yeah.
They'd closed. or that, I think it was in that branch.
Maybe they're open. They're open again. So maybe
okay.
just for some reason, maybe they were doing some work or something. But no, they're open. I was there a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
That is nice to see. It's such a beautiful historic place. Just if you're going to shops, don't forget to buy things now and then because so many people just go and take a photo. It is nice, like you told me, and I'm sure your podcast listeners will hear a different episode that Paul is doing. I don't know if it's going to be before or after this, but he, he's supporting the locals too. So don't forget to purchase things and not just at all the crazy fad places, but to share the love around.
I am. No one knows yet, but a mutual friend, Craig, with Breakfast in America.
Uh-huh.
Haven't yet made the podcast with him. The whole remote thing, it's all new to me. So he said next time we're both in Paris, we'll meet up. But I actually knew where his diner was.
Yes.
I stayed 5-6 doors down.
Really?
The first time I brought my girlfriend to Paris.
Okay.
So I went there yesterday and had
nice. It's a great
brunch.
place, and
lovely.
Craig and Julian are wonderful people. So it's a fun. It has its place here too. Because originally he was definitely trying to and attracted their French people who go there too. So keep in mind this is a living city. It's not just for the tourists, which we need and love. And I think that they add a dynamism to the city. But the French people want to try different things as well.
Yeah, and so I was in there, and there was one table with English speakers, and everyone else French.
Well, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, because they find it interesting. It adds a little cultural. I went to a Vietnamese place for lunch. They can't always take a plane somewhere,
Yeah,
so it's nice to have a little taste of a destination, no matter where you are.
Yeah, and again, each country do different countries' foods differently anyway.
True.
So it's
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think about all different places around here. There's a restaurant I've not been to, French's.
Yeah, I don't like waiting in line. So, and I
Is
don't
it busy?
like. Well, or you have the restaurant. You have to make a reservation 3 months in advance. It's very hard to do anything that's too crazed like that. I just personally speaking, don't want to wait in line. There are so many good places that one place can't be that much better than everywhere else. Really, there are a few exceptions maybe, but that's something that's quite different. But there's so many great quality places in Paris that there's always somewhere else to go where you don't have to wait in line.
I mean, I've never had it, never been, but Angelique's for the hot chocolate, and I see the queues.
And it didn't eat. So here's a little trick. If you do want to try Angelina without waiting
I called it
in
Angelique,
line,
didn't I? Angelina.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. No worries.
No
But
defamation court cases.
No, it's fine. But if you careful.
Yeah.
If you there are other branches in Paris. Of course, the historic one on Rue de Rivoli is beautiful, but it's the same quality, the same product at the others. So there is one in the Luxembourg Gardens, but not in the garden side next to the museum, which is on Rue Vaugirard. So again, same quality. It's a classy place there too. And there's one on Rue de Bac and maybe a few others. But if you really want to try their hot chocolate, go there and you don't even have to wait in line. You can get it to go.
Now that is a good tip. That's what I'm going to remember next time. Right, that's finished all my official questions. Is there anything you want to ask before you start self-promoting, which will be websites, contact details, all the rest of it?
Sure. Yeah. So, Paul, how do you think you want your podcast to go forward?
Being realistic, I'm giving myself 2 years from start up to when I feel I can judge it properly. I'm planning a lot in advance. Topics, subjects, I'm up to 2026.
Wow.
But it is the research that goes into it.
Sure.
It's not just, let's talk about this. It's for me, I'll start to research something, find something else, and it does it, rabbit holes.
Yeah, a lot of topics.
And then trying to condense it down. For me, that's part of the problem. But then I read my writing, and I read like I'm reading, as opposed to read like I'm talking. that's going to take practice.
Yeah,
That will take practice.
well, I'm sure you'll get it with the more you do your podcast, definitely.
But you're my third official celebrity interview. I've done family, but I can relax with family, but not knowing what I'm coming into, not knowing what people are expecting when I'm talking to them. But you put me at ease, which is nice. So thank you for that.
It's been a pleasure, Paul, and I look forward to listening to your podcast as well.
Thank you very much. So podcasts and websites.
Yes, so you can find all my details on my website, jetammeneither.com. I'll just spell that, it's a little trickier. So it's GETAIMENEITHER.com. It's the first time I think I've ever spelled it out. But just, which is inspired, so Je t'aime me neither. It's inspired by a famous song by French artist Serge Gainsbourg. And so for me, my life here is a bit that, you love it, you don't sometimes, and you find love and you don't sometimes. But that's my website, and my podcast does have a different name because I do have a bit of a tagline. It's Romancing in Paris. And so you can find that on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you might listen to podcasts, you can find it, and it usually comes up because it's the only one with that sort of name. And then my social media channels are all connected to Je t'aime me neither, so you can find me especially on Facebook or Instagram. I have a page on both, and a good way to have a little window into Paris from afar.
Absolutely. And just to let you know, I started with doing a web search, and I came up with the podcast, which I then listened to. Then I searched you because I don't use Facebook. I mean, I do, but
fine, yeah.
It's through Instagram, and then it expanded from there.
Great.
So,
well, that is nice to know how you came across, and I'm glad that my podcast stood out to you, and will give you further inspiration for your next trips to Paris.
Definitely. So the last few trips have been with a purpose. This one for interviewing.
Yeah.
Previous ones have been for running.
Okay.
Or I did New Year's Eve with the boys and the girlfriend, and it was so again it was getting them used to Paris.
Yeah.
And that was a whistle stop tour of see all the sights. Then we can relax. They did a lot of walking the first 2 days. Bless them.
That's what Paris is all about. You can
absolutely.
see so much on foot. A wonderful way to see the city.
And just before we do go, there's one little thing, if possible, I'd like from you.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, don't look at me like that. I'm just going to take something from here. Are you able to please sign this book for me?
I would love to, and I do appreciate that you purchased a copy and that you also have read the book.
Absolutely.
So I would be happy to sign it for you, Paul.
The book, I'm not going to lie, the book's unread.
Because
Kindle,
you read the Kindle,
absolutely.
so this is your collector's item.
Certainly is. Certainly
we'll have
is.
to get a photo together with it, even though we had a fun photo before too. So my pleasure, Paul.
And I'm going to say this for my eldest Rory, because he's also left-handed.
Yeah, I'm quite left-handed. I'm the
Very
worst
much,
ones.
yeah.
I'm like the diagonal writer. All right. And then when you might write a book one day, I will get a copy of it too.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I bought the pen at the same time as the notebook.
That's the nice pen you bought. Yeah, good choice. Yeah, it matches your notebook perfectly too.
Hema or Hema, H-E-M-A.
Oh yeah, that's good base, good like stationery and supplies and stuff like that.
And I'll probably get my Christmas bauble. Every year I buy a new Christmas decoration
nice.
for the tree, so that's a
Good
nice
choice
one.
too.
So, thank you very much for, just thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
You've been very kind to me.
I'm
and
happy
I mean
to
that
help
sincerely.
out and help get your podcast off the ground, and best of luck, and I'm sure there will be many more episodes to come.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm now going to stop and we will take some photos.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
That was Lily Heise of Je t'aime me neither.com, and her podcast is available on parisundergroundradio.com/romancing in Paris. The notes will appear on my Buy Me a Coffee /an Englishman in Paris website. Just look for where it says podcasts or show notes, and you'll find all the links in that part there. A huge thanks to Lily, because she did supply me with an insight and with some contacts. As you heard there, I haven't been able to get Craig just yet to enable the podcast, but I'm going to bank on that. There's going to be a little bit of a hush-hush. I'm actually lining up 3 or 4 other people already for interviews. I do have... Next season is going to be my monologue season, unless these interviews come to fruition, but I don't think they will. I've got the Paris Olympics coming up. That's going to be more than enough for me. 6 nights in Saint-Denis and to and from Paris and the Olympics. So I'm going to try and work out possibly for season 3. But who knows? Who knows? More on that later on, which in theory should actually be in the coming up section, not the conclusion. So the conclusion was for me just to say thank you once again, Lily. Absolutely amazing episode, barrel of laughs, and I truly do appreciate you allowing me into your little world and your big world, and putting me in touch with some amazing people. So thank you, Lily. That's Lily Heise, the author of Je t'aime me neither, which is also the name of her website, jetaimeneither.com. And her Romancing in Paris podcast can be found on parisundergroundradio.com/romancing in Paris. At this point, I also want to thank, we have Bulgaria, we have Canada. Bulgaria is just amazing, it's blowing me away. But we have Bulgaria, Canada, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. I don't know where you guys have come from, but you are supporting me, so thank you for that. Please get in touch, let me know who you are, where you are, what you want, and thank you for making me so popular in your countries. Truly humbled and amazed as well. I haven't had any more answers yet on any of my questions, but that's not a problem. I honestly don't mind, because it's still early days, but there are questions to be answered, there are polls to be responded to. Let me just quickly give you a little rundown of what is available. We have on Spotify, I'm afraid. So if you're not on Spotify, you can't really do that. So I'm going to read out questions. And by all means, feel free to email in our answers at coffeepot@anenglishmaninparis.blog. So, Coffee Pot Conversation introduction, right at the beginning. It was one question. What topic are you hoping I cover? Pick a topic. You'll probably get more of an idea when I do the monologues, which again are going to be generally season 2. I do have one, maybe 2 coming up in this season. I've already had La Lido. That's the kind of monologue that I'm doing. Another question, where is your favourite place to eat in Paris? And we did have an answer from Charlie Jane 001, and she says, any cafe in Place du Tertre, Montmartre, which again, I was up in Montmartre with Christian in 1.3 French Abroad, and straight after that interview, zoomed down a hill to Pigalle, where I met up with Lily in today's episode 1.4, Romancing in Paris. So that was another question that you could have answered, which was on episode 1.1 on eating in Paris with Nev. And there was a poll, there still is. You've got 324 days left at the time of recording this. Which is your favourite mealtime? But episode 1.2, Lido de Paris. Which shows, cabarets, or events have you been to in Paris? The poll, have you been to a show in Paris? But just to let you know that which shows, cabarets, events have you been to in Paris was answered not only by Nev with the Moulin Rouge, but Ricardo Michelena Blasco, who said the Moulin Rouge and the Lido. So thank you for your answers there. Much appreciated. Haven't had any emails yet. A little bit worried, but hey, plenty of time. I did ask on April's episode, April in Paris, which is a special for a 10-year anniversary. Have you taken a guided tour in Paris? And if you have, tell me more. If you haven't, why is that? Episode 1.3, how do you feel about rental e-scooters and e-bikes? That was because of the e-scooters being banned by Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris. And the question that the poll was, have you ever walked to the east of Sacré-Cœur? Which is funny because Christian at French Abroad, they were at number 19, Rue des André Sartre. Rue André Desartres. They're now at number 17, Rue André Desartres. So they're still there. Have a look to the east, to the right of Sacré-Cœur. As you're walking up, you see it, cut to the right, and they'll be there. And today's question, 1.4, romancing in Paris with Lily Heise. Where is your favourite romantic location? Doesn't have to be in Paris, but it can be because we're based around Paris. But the poll is, what makes a place romantic? And I've given a couple of options: the location, the company, the activity, the ambience, the food and drink, or just generally the escape. So let me know. Answer any of those, by all means, straight through with Spotify, or you can, as I say, email me, coffeepot@anenglishmaninparis. And now it's time for Jasper's jingle.
Coming up on Coffee Pot Conversations.
We have got another interview coming up. We've got 2 interviews coming up. Actually, we've got 3 interviews coming up for this season. 4 interviews for this season. It's like an auction house in here. 4 interviews remaining. 1 with a repeat guest. We have one from, well, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to wait. But she's a lovely lady. And we also have one which hasn't even been recorded yet. How about that? We've also got another monologue episode. That's an exciting one, kind of. As exciting as monologue episodes can be. Yes, I've been rattling on for probably about 3 hours now just on this episode, sandwiching Lily, so to speak. Yeah, I'm not going to mention that one anymore, but that is coming up. And finally, we do have the best bits. Now, the best bits I am worried about. I'm not going to lie. I am very worried, very, very worried, because I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what my best bits are. I don't know how I'm going to manage to wrangle it. I don't know if it's going to be a half hour, maybe a 10-minute episode. I may just do the jingles and then leave it at that. Best bit survived, huzzah! But we've still got that coming up. Don't forget the 2nd and the 4th Tuesdays of every month, January to May, and in July to November. We're very, very nearly halfway, and very, very nearly already in season 2. So that's quite exciting for me. As I said during the interview, I'm going to give myself 2 years before measuring my level of achievement. What I do want to do somehow is I do want to create a little community. I don't know the best way of doing it, but it's still plenty of time. I'm still only in my 2nd month of Coffee Pot Conversations, hosted by an Englishman in Paris. So I just want to say to all of you listening, thank you very much. I shall see you soon. And now it's time for Rory to sing us out.
Coffee Pot Conversations.